In this video, I'll tell you how to tutor English as a second language from scratch. Let's go! Step number 1. Pick the right student to tutor. So here's the story of how I learned this one. When I first started, I actually started together with a friend, and we both focused on tutoring English as a second language. I focused on tutoring high school students. In particular, I prepared them for their graduation exam in English as a second language. And this exam would determine whether those students would get into the university they wanted, whether they would get the full ride scholarship. So the exam was a big deal, and my students were really motivated without me even doing anything. It's just they had this big ambitious goal they needed to achieve, and this exam was a big stepping stone towards that. But my friend, she struggled to sign anyone up. And that was because she decided to focus on tutoring middle school kids who didn't have any big goals yet. So they would not be as motivated and they would not stay with her for as long. And in general, they would not be willing to invest as much money into her tutoring because it's just not the right student category. My big idea here is that find someone who is ambitious, who has a big goal, and ideally make sure that whatever it is you're tutoring is a stepping stone towards that goal. It has to be related to that goal. Step number 2, let people know that you exist. In other words, we're going to talk about promotion. I actually wrote a bit about it in my group tutoring roadmap, and if you want to grab it, it's available by following the link in the description below. So there are several ways you can let people know that you exist. The first one is connecting with students in different communities. They just love to gather together. So if you can just join those communities and, answer different questions or just interact with students in the comments, they would be more willing to check out your profile and just see who you are. Another option for promoting yourself would be posting free content online. The idea is very similar. If you post stuff consistently, algorithms would promote you and new students would learn about you. And they would check out your page and just, that builds the goodwill, which allows you to sell different products to those students later. The third way to promote yourself is by engaging in different partnerships. And that's something that I utilized at the very, very beginning of my journey quite a bit. So since we have this big goal, oftentimes there are different stepping stones, different things that students need to do to achieve that goal. In my case, since students wanted to go to universities, they actually had to take several exams, not just English as a second language, but on top of that, they also had to take an exam in sociology or in some different other subjects. And by partnering with tutors in those fields, like the tutors that I don't compete with, because basically we teach the same students, but it's like we teach them different stuff. So it's kind of like Coke and fries, you know what I mean? You can reach out to those tutors and for free of charge, oftentimes they actually agree to promote you if you promote them in return. Win-win. So that's what I did at the very beginning. Let's go to the next one. So that would be running paid ads. For this, you need some financial capital to start, so I did not do that until my tutoring business was actually making some money. So I would not recommend doing this unless you know how it's done and you know how to make it profitable. Because when I first started, I actually lost quite a bit of money on running paid ads before I figured out how that whole thing works. And finally, that would be connecting with people that you know. And by people you know, I mean like maybe some parents that you know, or even just like family, friends. You can literally let everyone you know that you are doing this whole tutoring business thing and you're looking for students, and they can check their network connections like for people who are looking to study whatever it is you're tutoring. I would probably not rely on it as much if you go the group tutoring route, but I just decided to give this an honorable mention because this is one of the ways. Let's go to the step number 3. And the step number 3 is going to be all about creating compelling offers. So the main idea here is that you don't want to be like everybody else. Because once you become just another tutor, you participate involuntarily in this race to the bottom. So if someone charges $20 an hour, if you charge $25, well, students will just go to someone who charges $20. And if someone charges $10 an hour, guess what's going to happen, right? So to avoid racing to the bottom, you want to differentiate yourself from all of those other tutors. And you do that by providing a unique offer that nobody else provides, ideally. To do that, you need to provide value, right? Because people give you money for value. So your value needs to be unique. So how do we create that unique value? That's something that I learned from an entrepreneur named Alex Hermosi. So this is like a wonderful value equation. So for all of you math nerds out there, you're gonna love this. So value is basically dream outcome. So whatever it is your students are trying to achieve, multiplied by perceived likelihood of achievement. So how likely are they to actually achieve that goal? Divided by time delay and effort and sacrifice. That's it. So what we want to do, we want to maximize whatever is on the top of the equation and minimize whatever is at the bottom. So in the ideal world, you would just give your students the outcome. So the second they run their credit card, you would give them this maximum score in their exam, or you would enroll them into the university. But of course, we talk about the real world, so it's not gonna be perfect. But you wanna get as close to this perfect scenario as possible. And the closer you get, the more valuable your offer is. Basically, that's the main idea. And to figure out what it is that you could offer to stand out from other tutors, focus on the pain that your students have and focus on their goals. Think about that. And that's how you can craft that unique offer. I'm intentionally not telling you what to offer so that you could play around and see kind of like for yourself what your students want. Like one of the fun things that we were offering, we offered a chat with a psychologist because our students felt like they had too much anxiety, too much stress going on, and they didn't really have any access to affordable mental health support. So we actually enrolled a psychologist who was actually providing tech support services. So that was just like one of the unique angles to what we did. This is like a very unexpected one. But the more creative you get with this, the more you differentiate yourself from the rest of the market. Now, the next concept that I found very valuable is actually a concept of the thing called value ladder. So I learned this one from the marketer Russell Brunson. So here's the main idea. When you think of selling stuff, it's very helpful to kind of provide an analogy of like dating space. When you meet someone for the first time, and if you just immediately ask them to marry you, in many cultures that would be considered to be a bit rushed. I'm not saying in every single culture, but like in Western cultures specifically. Typically in Western cultures, you would go on a date with someone first, then maybe you would get into a relationship, and then as that progresses, you might engage in marriage. That's kind of like the natural progression of things. And it's very helpful to think of offers in the very similar manner. So when someone meets you online for the first time, they might not be willing to give you a bunch of money, and that's okay. Some people would, but like I would say 90% of people probably would not. So you want to provide some free value to those people, as I mentioned earlier, so that they would kind of like see what kind of personality you have, what kind of explanations you can provide. After that, you can offer them a small paid course. So it's kind of like not your main offer, but they still have to pay you something to get that value. And as a final step of this ladder, you can also offer your main product. And that's exactly what I did in my business when I was running the group classes. I always had this like small course running every month, and my main offer was running all year round. So I would open enrollment like every few months for my main offer. And my small courses, they just kept running, kind of like letting people try it out and see if they like my teaching style. What I love about teaching English in particular is that we have very distinct topics that, not even topics, we have very distinct skills that someone needs to learn in order to master English, right? So they need to learn how to speak, how to write, read, listen, and they also need to learn grammar. So this provides you pretty much the whole structure of what people need to learn in order to master English as a second language. And another beautiful thing here is that, yes, they can Google all of the grammar they want. They could even probably study reading or listening on their own. But when it comes to speaking and writing, this is something that's like almost impossible to learn on your own. Ideally, you need someone who has the knowledge to provide you feedback, to kind of point out your mistakes and all of that. So speaking and writing makes tutoring English as a second language more valuable as a thing overall compared to other subjects that you can learn. And so what I did with my small courses, because like the natural question that arises, what could you teach for a small course? And what could you teach even for the free stuff? Like for the free stuff, honestly, you can teach the entire grammar because they can Google it anyways. But if you teach that grammar to students like online by posting videos on YouTube or like whatever platform you want to choose, students would learn your teaching style. And this is like something very unique. So they might specifically go to learn about all of the stuff that they can find online from you, because you have that specific type of explanation that resonates with that particular student. And for the small course, you can literally take any of these topics that I just listed. So speaking, writing, listening, reading, or grammar, and you can run that as a separate course on its own. And that's exactly the way I did it. So those are actually sections from the exam that I was preparing students for. So I would just turn one section into a small course. And this way, by the time they graduate from that small course, they would have a significant increase in the skill level in that particular subskill. They would see some results, but they would realize that they need more. And that's exactly what would prompt them to sign up for the main offer. Now, one more thing that I almost forgot to mention. After you run any paid course, be that a small course or a big course, make sure to collect testimonials, because testimonials, like in accordance with the value equation that I showed you earlier, they help to increase the perceived likelihood of achievement. So students would believe you more, and they would believe more that they can achieve their outcome if you have a whole bunch of testimonials. So this is kind of like the example with a surgeon. Would you go to someone who's trying to perform the surgery for the first time, or would you rather work with someone who's already had like 10,000 surgeries under their belt, right? So that's kind of like a very similar idea. And we all start with nothing, so it's okay if you don't have any testimonials to begin with, but over time you want to build that library of them. With my tutoring business, I've built a library of over, 600 testimonials, I think. So that was very helpful because I didn't need to explain to people that like, hey, I'm legit. I'm just like sending them the link of all of those testimonials, and I'm like, if you want to take a look. So that's pretty much like the sequence. So you choose the students with a big goal, like with a big ambition. You let them know that you exist. You build your offers in such a way that students can try something for free, something relatively cheap, and then they can sign up for your main offer. And every time you sell something, at the end you collect testimonials and make sure that your students are satisfied. And if you want to get even more instruction, again, you can grab my group tutoring roadmap in the description below.